Hey, what's up? It's Frank here from Data Driven. Um, can I do there we go. Looking for there we go. Does that work? It does work. So they've changed the UI here on Restream Mobile. For the most part, it's better. So the real reason was inspired to do a live stream on this wonderful fall Saturday, last day of September. Weather's awesome here in the DC suburbs. I'm actually in Rockville, and I'm at the new Barnes and Noble. They used to have a larger facility across the street, but now they kind of roll into here. And I think I did a live stream from here some time ago, and was really my first post-pandemic visit to a bookstore. And my wife is doing some shopping next door with our youngest, uh, and it's interesting because I used to go to Barnes and Noble quite frequently, and not just because once upon a time I was the um, webmaster at BarnesandNoble.com, and our goal was to crush Amazon. Um, Spoiler alert, it didn't work. So now Barnes and Noble has been, I think they were delisted or they were taken private by an equity firm, and they've kind of reformed the stores. And this here is one of the first models of kind of the new wave Barnes and Noble. And I have to say, I have mixed feelings about it. In a lot of ways, it's really well done. In fact, it's almost indistinguishable from the when Amazon had actual brick and mortar stores, which I also did a data point there. Um, what's interesting is instead of having kind of a wide variety of merchandise, they tailor it to the local um, community, right? The local area. Right? They use data analytics to figure out, what sells in, in this case, Rockville, Maryland. Same thing that um, the Amazon in-person stores also did too, right? They had all that data. In fact, that was a um, big thrust of the thing. I was like, wow, like they show popular in the area, and not surprisingly, right? This is not exactly a technology hub. So if you go in there, the computer tech book section's pretty light. Um, Although there were some interesting books there that kind of bridge the world of I would say policy and technology, which again, not surprising given that we're in the suburbs of DC. In fact, I actually picked up this book called Convergence, and it's Artificial Intelligence and Quantum Computing, Social, Economic, and Policy Impacts, which I think is um, it's an interesting read. So, of course, I picked it up. And I think there is right there the notion there's something about going into a bookstore, even the new wave Barnes and Nobles, which again, mixed feelings about. They are very bright, they're very modern, but there was a certain appeal to kind of the rustic or kind of green, um, uh, dark woods type feeling of the old Barnes and Nobles, the big comfy chairs. There's not really a lot of comfy chairs here. In fact, one of the things that's great about Barnes and Noble is you can kind of just sit there and read and hang out. And they do have a space here. They do have a cafe, but it's not quite the same. I don't think I saw a single chair in the main area. I just find it interesting in a lot of ways that one, this once dominant retail player has been supplanted by Amazon. Really, there are other competitors, Borders, and things like that have all gone under. So it's a testament to how well Barnes and Noble is run, um, that they're still around. It's a testament to how poorly the website was run. I have many stories about that, and some of the decisions that were made early on that have long-term consequences. In fact, we're talking. I left Barnes and Noble in 1997, but it was I don't. It's weird because like it was still remains one of the best companies I ever worked for. It was really good. I suspect that's kept the same. I just find it interesting that they are now copying Amazon in such a way. But it also, I think, speaks to kind of the downside of data driven retailing, right? In the sense that um, not a lot of technology books. There were a couple of interesting cybersecurity books and things like that, but My shopping habits, my behavior has changed over, certainly over the pandemic, certainly over the years. Hey, I see I have a chat. Let's see. Yeah, Books a Million is pretty cool. Um, I haven't been one of those. Are they still around? 'Cause I haven't seen one. Um, there actually is one in Arundel Mills, which is a big mall out near Annapolis. Was there like a week ago to get me some new Timberlands because there's a Timberland outlet store there. Um, but I wasn't able to stop at Books a Million because when you have kids, they don't exactly have. Can I put the chat overlay there? I can. The kids had a kind of a finite attention span. In fact, when I was here with the kids, what's clever about Barnes Noble, although annoying, I guess, as a parent, is they sell a lot of toys, right? A lot of book related toys and kind of STEM toys too. It's actually pretty cool. The downside of such an approach is, going in there looking for books, you can end up spending quite a bit of money on toys, which in the cosmic scheme of things isn't so bad. But that having been said, Books a Million really was heavy on the toys. Now that you mentioned it, Thomas, hope things are going well for you. Hope you're having a great Saturday up by you. But and I guess when you say down south, that includes where I live. But I mean, ultimately, I think it's an interesting, um, known by BAM now. That's right. They are known by BAM now, Books a Million. I saw that and I was like, what the heck? First time I saw it, I was like, what the heck is BAM? And I realized, oh, Books a Million. But it's, the downside of data analytics, relying too heavily on that. And again, in the cosmic scheme of things, far more worse things going on in the world. As a technologist, I would love to see a large technology section, right? Like they used to have at the one across the street. Or even more to the point, some of the other Barnes and Nobles that I would go to, um, whether it was in Seattle or Richmond. Actually, Richmond, the Barnes and Noble in the West End, I don't know if it's still there, in Short Pump, used to have a tremendous technology book section. It was blended, and what I find um, telling is how little actual raw technical books there are here. And again, they're just playing to the numbers, right? But as someone who was kind of an outlier, particularly in this area, though I don't really live in Rockville anymore, I find it a little frustrating. Now the upside is, I can go to, ironically, Amazon.com. I did take a picture of some books because I don't want to spend too much money today. This is the one I kind of walked away with. Um, but I do find it an interesting state when you do have heavily reliant on data analytics, you are going to miss the edge cases. And in the scheme of things, it's probably okay. There's probably not a lot of software engineers comparative to other types of careers here, right? I find it very interesting that this was on prominent display. Um, where it talks about AI and quantum computing, but really from more of a economic and policy point of view. So I have a long train ride ahead of me this week. So I plan to read this on the way up. But I do find it interesting. There was another book in there. It was Henry Kissinger, Eric Schmidt. It was the Age of AI. I almost bought that one too, but I figured I took a picture of it so I can always order it later. That's an interesting idea. So I'm going to hide the comment because so I can read it because this silly interface. Oops. So it basically says, I want to hide that. There we go. So that's like a good idea, Thomas. Hang on. A real opportunity, technical books, hands-on workshops and workstations, probably more of a high-end pay-as-you-go alternative to libraries and one company-centric solutions. No, I think that's an interesting idea. I wonder if that business idea has legs because, given that we live, and it's also telling that a good third of the books in the computer section were devoted to cybersecurity, and we kind of look at where the hottest job market is. This is the Silicon Valley of cybersecurity. The between Fort Meade and Langley, like this is a really hot, the Baltimore kind of DC corridor is really, that is really kind of the, for lack of a term, the Silicon Valley of it. And it's very telling, right? And there was actually a really good book on kind of getting started with hacking and like ethical hacking and things like that, which I almost picked that one up, but I do realize I've got a ton of work to do, both for work and for data driven impact quantum and a few other things I got going on, like writing the Chat GPT book. So between all of that, I exercise some restraint, and I think it's also interesting that whenever I did go to Barnes and Noble, I would always pick up 3, 4 books. Now I've kind of been weaned off of it because of the pandemic. I used to go at least guaranteed once every 2 weeks. I'd stop by. Sometimes I would just, bring the laptop and kind of clear my head there, right? It was a good alternative to working in somewhere a little more noisy, like Starbucks. But now I've kind of, I wouldn't say I've broken of the habit. If I'm near Barnes and Noble, I'll try to stop in, or even a Books A Million, children permitting. But I do like your idea, Thomas. I think that's an interesting concept, and I think it would work in areas that are. How would it work in areas that are not necessarily technology hubs? Um, not like a place like Silicon Valley, right? Um, or New York. There used to be a technology bookstore um, down in the financial center where I'd always go and pick up stuff. They would always have good clearance deals too. Um, but there are areas that do have a heavy technology influence and presence. Boston, which I think is up by you, being one of them. DC, Baltimore to a certain extent, um, and I'm sure there's other places around the country that would have a good reason to have this. Right? It's kind of, even though it's kind of a fringe, I would say an edge case. Fringe is a little bit harsh, but there would still be enough, I think, in a large area to make it worth investigating. I don't know. It's an interesting idea. I like it. But mostly I wanted to reminisce on kind of the good old days of Barnes and Noble, um, how the pandemic has changed that, how Amazon opened up and eventually shuttered all of their physical bookstores, and how Barnes and Noble kind of copied and pasted the playbook from those Amazon bookstores. And I just find it ironic because that's really how all this started. You know, have to rely on open access licensing. Interesting. I need to do some. Whoops. Good God. This new interface needs a little bit of work. Have to rely on otherwise pretty. Yeah, well, I see what you mean. Yeah, yeah. Especially if you're doing Windows, like if you had like 6 or 7 Windows workstations running, or even more, you have to pay for it. Well, then I guess all the things would have to be Linux based, then, wouldn't they? It's funny. Last year, I um, I managed to present at I presented at not only did I go to AWS reInvent, I presented there, and I presented from my MacBook. And I was telling some former colleagues of mine at Microsoft and some also former MVPs at Microsoft, like they were like, I don't even know you anymore. Who are you? Like, it's just been an interesting transformational journey the last few years. Big smile. I assume that's for the Linux comment. But with that, I suspect my wife is done shopping, and if she's not done shopping, I could sneak in a few minutes to get a read on this book. Um, but it's interesting to kind of see it all come full circle, right? Amazon copied Barnes and Noble, beat them to the punch, and that's an understatement. Going online, becoming a bookstore, and then throughout the years, they copied from each other. And it is a testament to not just how well Barnes and Noble's run, but I guess Books A Million too, right? Is that they're still around, whereas Borders closed. In fact, we used to live in. I really did like Borders. I was almost ashamed to like Borders. I used to go there a lot. And they had a really good technology section. So when the one in Germantown closed, I was really unhappy. But it's just interesting. You know, what do the futures of bookstores hold? Obviously, a big part of it is the community aspect. There's not really a lot of places to sit outside the cafe, but there's also the notion of I saw books that I did pick up, and I was going to do that. Um, and oh yeah, thank you. Good luck. Let us know how the policy read goes. Thanks, Thomas. I definitely will. I'll let you know how it goes. I thumbed through it. It looks like a pretty solid, pretty good, easy train read. You know what I mean? Um, but there were books there I totally would have picked up, whether it was for the kids, there was a book on coding. So all I ended up doing was just taking pictures of it, and I can kind of look it up on Amazon later and make it more informed decision as opposed to doing kind of a impulse buy. For me to walk out of Barnes and Noble with just one book at one point would have been impossible. Um, um, but it's interesting to notice, like, and I also picked up a couple of magazines. Like, yeah, I can read them online. Um, so what an interesting time we live in that I could have just skipped it and downloaded right to my Kindle and have instant gratification, but there's something about holding a physical book that the e-readers, the Kindles, the Nooks haven't really replaced just yet. They're definitely useful. I'm not saying that they're not useful, but I don't know. There's just something about it. And it's interesting how, while it's not gotten rid of my book buying habits, it definitely has changed them, because I can just go later and possibly even get a better price. Although it's not really about the price. I just wanted to pick this up now. So with that in mind, I'm going to end the live stream. Thanks, Thomas, for dropping by. I will let you all know how this read goes. And I'm trying to find, where do I end the live stream? Oh, there's the button. All right. So with that, thank you everyone for joining. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Has your um, book buying habits changed because of the pandemic? Has it changed because of there were a number of books there I saw. I'm like, I can watch a YouTube video for that, right? Or I can do a Pluralsight course or LinkedIn learning course on that. Has that changed for you? Let me know. Thanks and have a great day.